on inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. On today's podcast, I chat with Diana Richards about who's at the table. Hey everyone. Wow, do I need to hear this podcast? I don't know about you. So, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while or you follow me on social media, you know that I definitely have parts that struggle with food. I have for a very, very long time. And so, I was super excited that Diana was willing to chat with me about self led eating and asking the question, who's at the table? So, I've been pondering that this week, and I was thinking for me, it's also who's looking in the fridge, who's shuffling through my son's snack drawer, who's standing at the counter shoveling in food while I'm making dinner, who's thinking about food all day. And then I feel like Diana throws these curveballs in because I think the other question is who's bothered by those parts? Who's mad at those parts? Who's criticizing those parts? And then who's then saying we need to manage those parts by going on a strict diet? Don't eat for a day. So I love that. Parts of me don't, but parts of me are like, right, it's not just who's at the table, which I think is a really important question. Who's here while I'm eating this thing? But then there's also I'm repeating myself, but there's also the question, sort of there's three groups of parts, right? Who's doing the eating, and then who's mad at the one doing the eating, and then who then comes up with a plan for what we're going to do, how we're going to control that first part. So that's the takeaway I have. I have lots of takeaways, but that's sort of the main takeaway that I've been pondering this week after listening to the podcast again. And I think I probably need to listen to it a whole bunch more times. So I'm super excited. I hope that you love it. Let me know at IFS Tammy on Twitter, Instagram, and on Clubhouse. Join me. There's going to be some more Clubhouse news hopefully soon. I'm talking to a couple people about starting an IFS club. So more information about that soon, hopefully in the next week or so. Diana is a registered dietitian, yoga teacher, and is certified in IFS. She offers workshops, consultation groups, and intuitive eating groups. She's a frequent staffer at IFS trainings and worked with the self-led eating portion of the IFS Continuity Program. So if you want to follow Diana, she is also on Instagram at Diana Richards. She is also on Facebook, Diana Dugan Richards. You can also email her, dianaduganrichards@gmail.com, and check out her website, namastenutrition.net. She has lots of offerings. I joined a self-led eating workshop she did back in January, and she's doing another one with Therapy Training Boston. I think that one is in June. So definitely check out her website because she's got lots of things going on. She also does 2-day workshops. So check out her website. I'm just super excited that she is bringing her gifts to us. I look forward to hearing about your parts and your takeaways. And I hope you're doing well. Enjoy. So I like to start with where you are in the world and just what you would see if you looked out your nearest window.
A year ago, we moved into this amazing house. And when I walked through the very front room and turned to go toward the dining room, what I saw was this amazing hillside with all of these trees and sun dappling through and beautiful shade. And there was an energy that's permeated through this home. It's just a beautiful energy. So that's what I look at when I'm in my home, is this really beautiful outdoor space that I've dug in deep with my hands and reworking the soil. And we added a fence and a rock wall. So it all looks really just very homey and very comforting. So that's what I see when I look out of my house. And there's a red house at the top of the hill, which is on the street behind me. And when I realized that red house was up there, I thought, that's the house I see when I come home from work every day. And every day I come around the corner and I look down this street and I see this red house and I think, that's where I want to live. And so now I'm living behind it, but it was just close enough.
You
Yeah.
mean before you bought this house?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
I
I would
love
drive home.
that.
I snake through the neighborhoods because I only lived 2 streets away before we moved here.
Okay.
I lived in a condo, and this is what they call a single family in Watertown. And there was that red house, and I would see it, and I would say, "That's where I want to live." So I got kind of as close to it as I could.
I love it, and I love that you didn't even know that. I love that. Yeah. So you're in Watertown, Massachusetts.
Watertown, Massachusetts, I am.
Yeah.
And
And, I love how you described what you see. You also described the energy. Sort of there's a feeling. You're like, "It's not just what I see, but it's a feeling that I wanna have and that I have in my home."
yeah, and I'm a huge believer in energy. And so I asked our realtor if she could give me some more information about previous owners. And the last owner had only been here a couple of years, but it was the owner before that was here for 36 years. And so I got a chance to meet her, and she set me up with all the neighbors. And so when I moved in, I already had neighbors. I already knew them.
I
So
love
it was
that.
really, yeah, it was really, really nice to meet her.
That's amazing. You already had a community.
Already had community. And interestingly, 14 years at the condo, I knew the people next door because I was on a busy street. So we just didn't have the collaboration of neighborhood. So when
Wow.
I moved here, and everyone was so welcoming, and then COVID happened. So it was like, oh, I could not be in a sweeter spot right now.
Mm,
They're carrying people around me, and
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Did you have people, like, when it first happened saying, like, "Hey, I'm going to the grocery store. You need me to pick you up some toilet or, "Hey, there's toilet paper. Do you want me to grab some toilet paper for you so you don't have to go out?"
I was that person.
Oh, you were the okay.
So I was that person. So and still am. Just kind of reach out to them, and of course I have one neighbor that brings baked goods, and I take
Oh,
baked goods to other people. Because what do you do in COVID? You bake. So it's nice that I've got places to take it to now.
yeah, I can't bake, otherwise I would eat it all. So I'm just gonna jump right in. I have a
Absolutely.
part that says I cannot bake other because you will eat it all. You have no self-control. I'm just gonna jump in because that's exactly what I thought. I wish I could bake, but I can't because part tells me I have no self you have no self-control. You will eat it all. You cannot bake.
Yeah, I get it. I really do get it. And I'll tell you a short story. When I was at the condo, we had a condo mate who owned the first floor. And I would, in a nor'easter, I would bake a big batch of Toll House cookies. And I would eat, whatever I wanted while they were baking. And I'd have a few after. And I would always share with her. And I took a plate of cookies down to her. And she was like, oh, a plate of cookies. It wasn't wrapped or anything. And so she took one politely. And I'm like, no, 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 no. The whole plate is yours. Please, honey, take them. Because I was like you. It's like, no, Toll House are my deadly, right? And I'm going to have what I'm going to have. And I saved enough for tomorrow and the next day. And then I know I'll be hopefully saturated. And so, which is nice having neighbors. I can do the same thing or walk over 2 streets and hand them off to her. But so I'm
Do you
like,
eat the raw cookie dough?
I don't. That's not a thing for me. Um,
Really?
it's not a thing for me. It doesn't fascinate me for some reason. But fresh out of the oven, like give them a minute to cool off so you don't burn the roof of your mouth on a melted chocolate chip, right? And a cup of coffee. And it's just like, nirvana,
Hmm.
heaven.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a part of me that's as you're talking about that, that's like, okay, well, it's not then bad. Or there's the part of me that says it's bad, you can't do that. But as you're talking about it, that sounds very lovely.
Mhm. It feels lovely. And it's not that I haven't done work with my food parts. And, I kind of had the suspicion you would ask about them. And since you haven't, then I won't bring them up. But, I've done some work with,
Oh, no, 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 no. Back up. Mm-mm. Nice try.
Yeah. So
Let's talk about that.
yeah, so there are have been parts of me when they get activated that are very similar to what you're saying. Like I'm going to eat all of these cookies, or even the ones that I do, there's going to be some upset about it, or it's way too much sugar. What if you gain weight? This kind of thing. And I just did some work with them because I have a 12-year-old food manager who it was recommended by my mother that I consider that my weight was going up and that there was, her words, obesity in your father's side of the family. And I'm just worried. I'm just bringing it up. And she bought me the Teenage Diet book. And she, at the time in the 70s, early 70s, she paid for a health club membership, which was, you'll laugh, ladies in tights and leotards with very little equipment. They had those machines where you'd get on the belt and you'd put a belt around your waist and turn it on and it would jiggle you, right?
Yes,
And then they
yes.
would have you do some calisthenics and that kind of stuff. So she paid a lot of money for me to go to that. And I was so different from beginning of summer to end of summer between seventh and eighth grade because I really took it to heart. I read the book. I did what the book said. I exercised the way the ladies told me to. And that was sort of I'm going to call it the burden that landed inside of me, is that I wasn't okay like I was,
Yeah.
and that I had to change and I had to work really hard to keep the change. And so that 12-year-old would pop up sometimes, and get really concerned if I was going to eat all the cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you looked really different between those, which wow, that's such a crazy like time of life, that time. And
Wow.
then was there like a perfectionism sort of manager that was like, well, then I have to keep this up. I have to keep this up for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So meet my 30-year-old food manager, food and exercise manager. So yeah, this continued on, and we were military and we'd go to a different base and my dad would come home and say, "Hey, I found an exercise class for you," because he knew it was really important. And so there'd be young me and all these, military wives doing our exercise classes together. And so yeah, so that followed me, and even into my 30s, late 20s and 30s, I was really very physically active with, then it was called aerobics, right?
Yep. Yep.
Uh, so my manager,
Jazzercise. Did you do jazzercise?
yeah, I did not. For some reason, that didn't appeal to me, but I did one of the very first aerobic certifications. I was living outside of Montgomery, Alabama, and I drove myself to Atlanta and I spent 2 whole days getting, certified and teaching aerobics. And back
Wow.
then we didn't wear shoes. So that was the first time that there was an aerobic shoe that was introduced by Reebok. Yeah. So
Wow. That's
yeah. So
amazing.
that was my way to, like, here's how you're going to keep moving so that you can, earn the food that you eat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was that message. I have to earn the food that I eat.
Right. Right.
Mm. And then it became your job. Like so not just that I have to be someone that exercises all the time, that you went and got certified in it. It became like your career. Is that part of how it became your career?
Well, it was my secondary career
Okay.
from then on, for many, many, many years. Even, I transitioned at some point to teaching yoga only, but I was a spin teacher and a step teacher and what they called high-low aerobics, where you kind of just do the calisthenic kind of to music. And so, yeah, I did it all.
And then was your first career being a dietitian? Was that your first career or did you do something before that?
I did a lot. I've had many, many. Yeah. 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 Gosh, what did I do in my 20s? I went into banking for a bit and then I spent 10 years in the legal field as a legal secretary to legal assistant. And then I worked in the College of Nursing at UAMS in Little Rock, Arkansas. And that's when I found out that there were things called dietitians.
Okay.
Nurses were all saying, "You eat so healthy, you ought to be a dietitian." And so then I went to my undergrad and my internship. And that was I got my first job 2 weeks before I turned 40.
So, and all throughout that, was there this 12-year-old that was constantly making sure, like, that you ate healthy and that you did a lot of moving and that you were like, that she stayed with that her job? Like, did she stay with that job throughout?
Yes, I didn't know her as her then, obviously, but she was very much a present force. And I reached a point finally that I was lifting weights 7 hours a week, and I was teaching 5 hours a week. And so I was at a point where I just had to eat.
Yeah.
And, it was nothing for me to just take protein shakes, and I would soup up my oatmeal with protein powder and flaxseed oil and nuts and all this stuff because I just needed to get the calories in because I was expending so much in that activity. But I think it was her driving me, like, yeah, you got to keep doing this. See, all this exercise now, you can eat this. But it actually, at some point, I heard Michael Phelps say, it just gets tired eating. You
Mm,
just get tired eating when you have to eat more than what you normally would.
mhm,
But I do have a sense that she was there, present, driving me there.
mm,
And I've later come to learn that there's a sense of shame that she carried.
mm.
Yeah, and she actually gave my mom a pass, that it was totally fine what she did, that she did it in a very loving way. There was nothing actually shameful about it. But now I know, in the work I'm doing now, that you don't do that with your 12-year-old who's, a little adolescent, chubby. It's probably going to grow out of it.
Yeah.
You just don't focus on the body in the way that she did. So I've taken my pass back.
When did you, discover IFS?
I discovered IFS actually subbing an Anusara yoga class for a yoga teacher friend of mine. And I always announce that I'm also a dietitian. And I was approached afterwards by a therapist who invited me to give a presentation, a lunch and learn at her psychotherapy practice, which I did. A part of what they did there was informational sessions every week, and it was for their PsyD program, but they would let anyone come in. And that's where the last presentation was IFS, Intro to IFS. And I have to say, as Larry Rosenberg was speaking, in a very small room of us, I felt myself flush. I felt my heart rate go higher, but I was grinning. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm all of a sudden so nervous about something. And I asked him if the guy that developed this model, was there any way that he was a tantrika? And I was so then embarrassed, so more flushing, because he's not going to know what I'm talking about, but he totally did. And he said, I don't think he is, but he could be, because this is a very spiritual model. So the more I listened, I kept thinking to myself, all my years of yoga training means something. And the tenet of Anusara is to look for the good. And that we have mala, we have coverings that sometimes hide our view of the good, right?
Wow. Yeah.
We are intrinsically good and inherently beautiful. And that these coverings just don't allow us to see that goodness and that beauty. And to
Wow.
hear Larry speak the same words, but in a different way that wasn't Sanskrit, so like people might could understand this, I just got too excited. So then I was asking, where is this training held? Thinking I'm going to have to go to California or somewhere. And he goes, in Watertown Square, which is like 3 minutes from my house. So to me, it was like, I have to go do this. And I have to say, my level one, I think I have parts that have made me forget it. I felt so out of place there. I never stayed
Mm.
for any of the lunches because I was so close. I'd come home.
Oh.
I It was me and a business consultant and 28 therapists. And all my parts were going, what are you doing?
Mm,
What are you doing here?
mm.
But I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah. It's so interesting that I think that it's so different now. Like, it's the I PA'd for a level 1, I think 2 years ago in Watertown, and it's like, I'm not gonna say it's half and half because it's not that, but definitely I'm not gonna get the numbers right because 'cause I'm not good with numbers, but it was so many more. There were so many. It's yeah, it's I think it's changed so much. But that had to be really was it felt like parts of you were, like, intimidated by that, or was it, like, what was happening for you?
Well, in the field of dietetics, we are taught that there's a line between therapy and nutrition counseling, and that we let the therapist do the therapist work, and we could do the other work. But I so learned early on that it's not about the food at all, and so I've got to be able to speak somehow to people about what is it then if it's not about the food. So I realized, like, I think my third weekend, maybe that because as people were speaking in the big group, I was noticing that they were all afraid. They all had parts that were afraid. They weren't getting this. They didn't know. And I thought, I don't have to unlearn anything.
Mm,
I'm just
yeah,
coming in like just a clean palette, and I'm just taking it in. So that's what helped me relax a little bit,
yeah,
was knowing I kind of had everybody up on a pedestal that was much taller than mine.
right.
So once I realized that we all have parts with fears and concerns and, performance anxiety and that kind of stuff, I really settled into it.
Yeah. It is nice when you get to be a little bit older and you're like, nobody knows what they're doing. Like, I just helped a friend talk. I have a friend that's a professor, a psychology professor. He's a psychologist and he's a psychology professor. And he asked me to come in and talk about IFS with a group of students. And he's presenting him, and he's a great guy, and he's presenting himself. And I'm like, it's so funny because he's this professional guy. And but I don't know, it's just funny
Yeah.
how we do that. Like none of us know what we're doing.
I agree. I really do. And that's one thing my yoga teacher taught me, is that every day we step on the mat, we are stepping on as a beginner.
I love
And I
that.
take that even in the seat of the therapist, that I'm a beginner, and I'm going to just be open and curious and see what comes, and
Yeah,
let
love
my
that.
client teach me.
Yeah. So something you said, I thought we could maybe jump off of what you said. You said that it's not about the food. And there's a
Right.
part of me that's like, but it is. If you could just, so you gave me this um it's not a handout, sort of a list of things that we sort of
Mhm.
from our conversation we could talk about. And I immediately, so I was reading it, highlighting things, and then I was like, oh, okay, what kind of diet does she recommend? Okay, so is she recommending, oh, she's recommending the Mediterranean diet. Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Right.
So there's a part of me that's like, tell me what food to eat, and I'll eat that, and that will calm everybody down. And calm everybody down, meaning it will calm down the parts of me that are so obsessed with what am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to eat? Am I eating too much? And get so overwhelmed with that. So tell me about this idea that it's not about the food.
And a point of clarification, though, the idea about the Mediterranean diet is just kind of like an overview of what's out there in the literature, that about all the different fads that we've had throughout the years. And dietitians tend to go toward evidence-based and replicated studies. And so the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet are two that have a lot of standing research behind them. Almost everyone who comes to see me at some point will, at least historically, now that I don't know, there's an advancement in my system that I guess people perceive as differently now, but they all say, just give me a plan, tell me what to eat, and I'll do it. And I want to say it was Pam Krause, and I was PAing for her, and I was doing a demo with someone who brought a weight related and food related issue to talk about. And she said something to the effect of, I can't contract with you to work on weight loss, because if I do, then the part of you that wants to lose weight gets excited, but there are other parts of you that may not agree with that approach. And then that can cause some unrest and some uncomfortableness inside of you. What I can do is work with you and the parts of you that have all these different ideas to see if we can bring them closer to you.
Hmm.
So that's why it's not about the food. I can't tell you how many when I worked in a clinic, I worked in a nutrition management clinic at Botanical Center, and we had these printouts of our diet that my medical director and I had put together. And I can't tell you how many of those I'd see in trash cans throughout the hospital.
Wow.
Because if you can't give that kind of information unless it's asked for. So I did a really long study with motivational interviewing and thinking, okay, don't give them this until they ask for it. So that helped a little bit. But then I found that it's not about the food, but I don't know what it is about, and what I'm doing here is not working.
Mm.
So I ended up leaving there, going into practice, then IFS. So now I feel like I'm on surer footing around this idea, is that there are parts of us that think that have they've learned to equate food with soothing or helping with frustration or anger or sadness. The exiled parts of us that are holding the really tender, vulnerable feelings that they've taken from their historical experiences, and they've turned it into their core belief. And so then it is about that. It's like, I'm bad, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. So protectors develop to kind of bring the food and alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, over exercising. And so when I started seeing that, I'm like, no, it's not about the food. Because I would say 80% or more of my clients, I'm doing air quotes, know what to eat.
Yeah.
They know what to eat. They know what they've been told. They know what they've read in magazines. And where it gets conflicting is then they read about these different fad diets. And this way is the surest way to end your problems forever. You will never feel shame about your body again if you eat this. And so their manager parts are so eager to find the solution to quiet these, exiles,
Yeah.
that they go do it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't work. That somebody told them what to eat. They did what they told them. They felt great, but they can't sustain it.
Yeah.
And it's because other parts can't go that distance with them.
Yeah. So what then do you do? Because I feel like I don't know how many, I'm sure there's again the numbers or how many people have found them, me included, have found ourselves at that point, right? I did the thing, I lost a couple pounds, and I felt like, I felt better in my body, but then it's not
Yeah.
sustainable. Plus my exiles really use it to soothe me. So plus the chocolate chip cookie dough problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we do with that then?
Yeah, that is the question. Like, what do we do when I'm having these overwhelming feelings and I really just want to go eat everything? I'm very fortunate in that the clients who are finding me are open to IFS, and they're open at this point to doing their own work. And so it's been a little easier for me. I do have clients who are not, and I'll be really clear. I do work with a lot of clients who are still in OA. And I had a little bit of backlash a few months ago about me doing that work with them. But then I had this, I guess the self-like part tap me on the shoulder and said, yeah, but you're a hope merchant.
Hmm.
And so if
Why
you,
couldn't you work with in Overeaters Anonymous? Is that what you mean? So why couldn't you work with clients? Tell me what that means.
the, okay, thanks for the clarification. I've spent 8 years prescribing pretty rigid dietary intakes, supporting surgical interventions, medication interventions, very low calorie diets. And then when I walked away from that and I realized that not only is food not the problem, but that's not the way to fix it, that I moved out of a dieting role as a dietitian. So I don't call myself, I'm a non-diet, weight inclusive, health at every size kind of approach, because I know everyone can use some nutritional help at some point along the way. But for me, it's not about dieting. And when I get these clients who are referred to me, I just can't say no, because I feel like if there's any hope that I can bring to them, that's even a smidgen, a critical mass of,
Mm.
that maybe they can start to say, okay, so what if I didn't weigh and measure one meal a day?
Mm.
And then, could that turn into two, and so on, so that they can start to trust their own cues. And what they say is, oh, I would do that in a heartbeat. Or they say, like, I have clients that have not been in OA, and they said, I've gone on these rigid programs, and then I've decided I'm going to be intuitive. I'm just going to eat what my body's asking me to eat. And then they come in and they say, I gained 8 pounds this month being intuitive, and so this isn't working for me. And so we have to slow down and say, so who's saying this isn't working for me?
Mm.
And then we usually come to the dieter or the one that doesn't like the body at a higher weight. And so that's not intuitive. Now that's a parts driven approach. I tried this one. This part said to eat intuitively, but this one that says, "Oh, your weight's going up," is putting the kibosh on it.
Mm. It's so interesting because I was thinking, yeah, well, if I gained 8 pounds in a month, it's not working. And then you're like, oh, that's a part. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I guess that would be a part that says it's not working. Right. And then I also thought like, okay, but I wonder how that felt. Like, I wonder what energy, like, how did that feel to not have to weigh and measure and restrict? Or
right.
I think OA says you abstain from sugar, right? And sugar and gluten maybe is the what you,
Sugar and flour. Yeah,
okay. Like, um, yeah, so, like, I wonder how it felt. Like, how did it feel different in your body and your system when you ate intuitively,
right.
even if you gained 8 pounds? I don't know.
Well, sometimes because I have a science mind as well, and so I'll step into that part and kind of explain a little bit about the biologics of what's happening. Is that when a body is deprived and restricted for so long, its natural recourse is going to be to try to recover, and so restriction leads to backlash eating. So that's that first initial weight that comes on is the part that's like, thank goodness there's something here now,
Mm,
and it's
yeah,
genetic to recover and to
yeah,
get back to a certain weight. So my clients that have lost 20 pounds, and then they're saying it's creeping back up. I couldn't stop eating for the first week when I stopped dieting. That's genetic. That's coded.
wow. And
That's
that, man, that takes away all the shame, right? Like, because sometimes I've said to myself, "I'm binging," and it's like, I'm not binging, I'm just probably eating a little more normally.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. So it's helping them define what that is, like your
yeah,
body is urging you toward this.
yeah,
And can you manipulate it again? And can you restrict enough to get 8 pounds off? I'm sure you could.
yeah.
I'm sure you could, but at what cost?
But I wonder if there's also sort of that, like, it's right, the generic backlash, but then there's also the parts backlash, right? Like, the more I'm restricting, and like you said about the demonstration at the training, right? If we only listen to my weight loss, you need to lose weight, or you need to be this size, or you need to eat this certain way. The more I listen to that part, those group of parts, then I'm not listening to a lot of other parts.
Yeah.
And so there could potentially be some backlash. Just like we know with restricting and binging, there's gonna be some backlash with those groups of parts, probably.
Yes. And it's demonstrated in every client that I meet with. They know it, they even call it the battle in my head, or there's just a war going on inside of me, and I know this is the right thing to do to not restrict and diet again, but there are parts of me that are so upset that my body's growing larger,
Yeah.
and they're working, so we work together with the parts of them that come in that are really activated around what's going on for them.
Well, and I think that the thing that freaks me out about intuitive eating is a part of me says you can't trust yourself because you will eat all of the cookie dough. So there's no like so there's a part of me that's like, right, if I listen to my body, I don't know if this is true, but if I listen to my body, then I'm gonna drive to Dunkin's. Now I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna drive to Dunkin' Donuts and I'm gonna eat a dozen donuts because that would sound amazing, or at least a dozen like munchkins, and then a peppermint mocha, and then I'm gonna have a Big Mac, which I don't even eat ground beef, but then I'm gonna have a Big Mac for like this part of me is like you would go crazy, like you would just go out of control
Mhm.
if you listened to your body or ate whatever you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. And I get curious about that part that's really concerned about eating everything, because
Yeah.
we can often, as we listen to it, we can find out that it has a very lived experience, multiple experiences usually, of being told it could have something and then it got taken away, being told it could have something and then it got taken away. So these, yo-yo dieting where you're heavily restricting and then you're like, oh, screw it, or I'm going to restrict for 6 months and then I'm where I am, but then that part takes over and wants to eat. And so we just keep getting curious about the parts that are showing up in that way. and helping them see that there might be another way that they could still get their needs met. They could still have a McDonald's, or they could still have 12 munchkins, if they wanted to do that. And could it be done from a different energetic state, I guess?
Right, because if you were eating more intuitively and you had the 12 munchkins, that would actually might be lovely.
That's
Like you
right.
said, with a cup of coffee.
Right.
And then you might not even eat all 12 of them.
That's right. That's right. And I'm a firm believer of what we're thinking as we're eating informs how our body accepts and processes that. And I could be way off base, but I know when my folks are eating under judgment and criticism inside their head, they often don't feel well. They have a tummy ache. Oh, I ate that many.
Mm.
And sometimes I'll have an experience, like I have a client that'll say, I don't know why I can eat cheesecake one time and not at the other. And I'm like, so tell me about the time you ate it where it was fine. I was with my husband. We were on a date. We had a lovely dinner. We got a cheesecake. It was great. And then what about the second time? They were in their kitchen. They were eyeing it. They had the thing, they had the should nots going on, shouldn't have it. You had a big lunch. You don't need the cheesecake. And so they have all this stuff churning inside of them. And finally, the one that wants it wins.
Yeah.
And it's eaten really quickly without any mindfulness or any appreciation or any savoring. It's just kind of gobbled down. Then they have a tummy ache. And so for
Yeah.
me, it's how we're taking it in is how it settles in our body.
I love that. Yeah, and that makes so much sense too. If I'm eating something and I'm thinking if I'm thinking I shouldn't be eating this, then I'm probably eating it fast. I've noticed this about myself too. If I know that a part of me is going to like make me stop eating it soon, then I'm going to eat it really fast.
Right. That's right.
Tell me about this. I love that you wrote this down. I thought, oh my gosh, this is me like during COVID. If I'm working, so I'm at home. So if this, and this has happened so many times, I'm at home, I'm working, I'm seeing clients, and I'll have client after client after client after client with, 5-ish minutes in between. My son's remote learning in the other room.
Right.
I mean, it's mass chaos.
Right.
And why do I then shove food in my mouth in between? I have so much to do. And yet, like, I could be I could be checking emails, I could be checking in with him, I could be going to the bathroom. There's a zillion things I could do. And yet, I'm going to walk into the kitchen and shove food in my mouth. Tell
Right.
me about what's happening with that.
I would get curious again about that, and have you kind of interact with your parts about it if we were together. But my suspicion is that there's a lot going on with COVID, and we're isolated, we're anxious, we're unsure, we don't know, we're scared. And so these are all feelings that we haven't had to hold all at the same time anymore. And we're restricted in doing the things that we normally would do in general life, as well as those activities we might do to calm ourselves down, like maybe meeting a friend after work for, a pedicure together or something like that. We just don't have those release valves anymore.
Mm.
And the other thing is that parts often will pick up that they're not going to be cared for. And what I mean by that is if you're blowing through your day and you're doing this recording and then you have 5 clients and you barely have time to, do a nature call, it makes sense that they're thinking, well, she's not even going to sit down and have a lunch, or she's not going to have a snack that's going to kind of resustain her. She's at the end of her energy. And so we're just going to take matters into our own hands. And so when there's a break, that part gets you in there to kind of get things going. And sometimes the choices they make at that time are probably not what would have been made if there had been more intentional thought that went into it.
Yeah. They're like, I'm not grabbing the cut up like radishes. I'm grabbing the cookies or whatever.
Cookies and cheese sticks and, just that stuff that's going to fill us in that moment, right?
Yes. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about cultures and how there's this different cultures and sort of maybe different ways people look in cultures, and that idea of um, somebody might say, all the kids at school look this way, or all the girls at my college look this way,
Right.
but I have big thighs, big butt, or all of our families look, have big thighs and big butts, but all the girls at my school back in the day are shopping at 5, 7, and 9. Do you remember that store?
I had a Mr. Green jeans. I don't know if I've 7 9, but
5, 7, and 9 were like all the teenagers went that were like five, size 5, 7, and 9. And I could never shop there because I was overweight. So I have a part that really dislikes the store. I don't
I,
think it's even a store anymore.
I hope not.
I hope not either.
Hmm.
So
All
tell,
the sizes, all the
I
sizes.
know, I know.
Well, I think what happens is when we're younger, because we are so under the influence of our parents, number one. And so if we have parents where body size matters, then we're already going to be indoctrinated into that idea of how we should look. And society tells us how we should look. And yet there's an inner knowing in every one of us as to exactly who we are and how we're meant to be. But we get bombarded with these messages, 579, and there you are looking at this store going, oh, I can't go there. So now
Oh, yeah.
you're other, and there's a separatist kind of feeling around that a lot of your friends are able to go there and you can't. And so I think we start, as you know, about the whole idea about our core beliefs now starting to be the fears and upsets of our exiles. We start making stories about that we're other because of this, or I'm not liked because I can't go to that shop, or I can't be in that group because I don't fit in, I don't look the same way.
Yeah. I wonder how many people that becomes their story, like so young, that the way I'm being treated, even if it's not true, even if they sort of look the same size, I mean, sort of they look sort of normal bodied,
Mhm.
but they believe for whatever reason that it's because of the way they look. And I wonder how much, even if they looked normal sized, then how much what that does to people growing up. You know what I mean? Like what ends up happening with their relationships with their bodies and food if they
Mhm.
if they begin to believe that story that however they're being treated is because of their body shape.
They're tormented for their
Yeah.
whole life. So,
Wow.
I've got a few clients who are from countries that value a very thin body in a woman, that she is to
Mm.
be look a certain way because there's a certain outcome for women. Like you want to get married, you want to have a family, and so you have to look a certain way in order to attract the person. Another
Okay.
client from another country's father has a very strong belief that women need to be small, right? Small in everything, like in
Voice,
their
every
voice and
yeah.
everything, right? So it starts really young. I just read a statistic today or yesterday that as early as 5 years old, girls are talking about eating less so that they look better.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I thought it was 9, but then I read this new thing now, it says young as 5. And it comes from a lot of it's from our families, not just outside of us, because we're taught at a very young age that you hear your mom or you watch your mom eating a peach and some cottage cheese while you're having a sandwich.
Right.
And you want some of my sandwich? No, honey, I'm watching my weight, I'm on a diet. And so I had a gal who said at 3, she asked for more mayonnaise on her sandwich, and her grandmother told her she couldn't have more mayonnaise because it would make her fat. And she said, I had no idea what fat was.
Wow.
So we do it without knowing it. We talk about our bodies. I remember my mother, I was in junior high school, which is about the time that this was going on, who would reach down and grab, she called it her kablobber, and pick it up and like shake it and say, isn't this gross?
Aw,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So of course she's going to give me the teenage diet book, because
Yeah.
what's happening to me in that moment is triggering the parts of her that are so afraid of being fat
Yeah.
or having a fat daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a huge culture. We say diet culture, but it's really family culture and society. And maybe it is self led eating, how we can actually check in with ourselves to see who's asking. And if we can check in and ask who's asking for the munchkins or some cookie dough, we can tap into the energy that's under that. So often clients will say to me, how do I know if this is my dieter talking or if this is really the good girl part or if this is this? How do I know the difference?
Yeah.
And I always say, check the energy. So if you're feeling this urgency, I think you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like, I want the cookie. No, you're not going to have the cookie. I want the cookie. No, you can have one. No. And so this
Yes.
dialogue goes on in our head. And so if we sit with that energy, so what's the urgency about getting the cookie?
Mm.
And what if we do go and get one and we can slow down around it and we can like settle into like, there's nothing wrong with a cookie. There's the hardest part of my job is trying to help people get to the place where they understand that all foods are emotionally equal. All foods are emotionally equal, and there are times that we want to feed the celebration. We're with a family, we're having a dinner together, we want to feed the celebration. There are times that we feed sadness. We're having a hard day, so let's go out and have a cup of coffee and a donut. There are times that we feed joy. I mean, we eat for so many other reasons besides physical hunger, and it's all okay. Every bit of it is okay. There's no healthy, not healthy. I struggled for a long time. How can I not say the word healthy? How can I say your body doesn't know the difference in the short term of a donut or a peanut butter sandwich? To it, it's carbs and fat and protein. And it's going to break it down into usable qualities for your body.
Mm. That's beautiful. Um, yeah, right. So it's not healthy, and not good or bad, or
Yeah.
and I think that I feel there's a part of me that's surprised and a part of me that's not surprised that you're giving permission to say it's okay to feed the hunger, not to feed the hunger, so that you don't just feed the hunger, but you feed the sadness and you feed the joy, and it's okay to do that. And there's a part of me that's like, is it? And then I kind of want to cry a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, is it okay to do that?
Well, I often hear, what are you hungry for? And I use that phrase a lot when I was teaching yoga for mindful eating. But I rephrase that a lot to say, what's the hunger?
Mm.
Instead of what are you hungry for? What's the hunger? What are you feeding? So that we get an awareness that I'm feeding the part that's super anxious right now because I submitted a job application and I don't know if I am going to get it.
I love that.
So, okay, so we're going to feed the anxiety for a little bit. So what if we slow down around the anxiety, ask what it really could use right now? And it wants chocolate chip cookies, then let's have chocolate chip cookies, and ask it if it would be willing to slow down with you and to breathe with you and to take bites of this with you and to savor it and to really get into it. Like there's something in OA, a client told me there's a rule. Your foods cannot sing. And I'm like, let your food sing. Let it be tasty. Let it be vibrant. Let it be pleasurable. That is our right to have pleasure when we're eating.
Mm.
But no, it has to be bland.
That's such a weird rule.
There's so many rules. I can't even go into all the rules. There's
I
so
didn't
many.
know that. I don't know very much about that. I love that question though, because I think when I've used that, like, what are you hungry for? A teenage part of me is like, I'm effing hungry for this huge bowl of chocolate chip cookie dough. And what are you gonna do about it? You know what I mean? I sort of have this, and then I'm like, okay, go ahead and eat the cookie dough.
That
So
gave me chills just because I could really feel that.
I kind of came at you too, like,
But no, but yes. And I mean, I chills, but my heart was touched. It was like, yes, of course you want the whole bowl. Because how often have you been told you can't have it?
yeah, yeah. So I love asking that question, and then I love how automatically it would slow you down, and then it really unblends you from that part and invites self in and it unblends you from the part that wants to eat the cook. I'm just going to keep saying that cookie dough because cookie dough is so good. And for me, and so, it unblends. And then when self is there, then right, everything slows down. And there's so much more just compassion for those parts that are sometimes so alone because I
Yeah,
just, right, we push them away. I don't want
right.
to, yeah,
And
yeah.
when we push away, for me, again, back to energy, there's a contractive quality around that. There's a darker, not that dark is bad, because that's a very beautiful quality in our yin yang world. But when you can say, who's hungry or what's the hunger about, and we breathe, then there's some space.
Mm.
And at Kripalu, they have a little table tent because you can't talk during breakfast. And a friend of mine said, I went there and I was reading the table tent and it said, don't hold your belly in. And I was like, I have held my belly in since my dad told me to when I was 8. And so I asked her, so what was it like for you to let your belly go and just to breathe that deeply in your belly? She said, that was the most delicious breakfast I'd ever had because
Wow.
now there's space.
Wow.
Right? There's
That's
space to
beautiful.
really be and enjoy and to sense. You can't really sense hunger fullness if you're contracted.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the amount of messages we have that we don't even realize we have. Like the food rules that we've picked up that we don't even realize until something like that happens. And they're like,
That's right.
oh, I've been doing that my whole life.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right.
Do you want to say anything about this? On the first page, most of us come leave our families with exiles who are desperate to be taken care of by another person.
Yeah.
I like to talk about that for a minute if we can.
Sure.
I like that
Sure.
idea.
Sure. Years ago, I met with a therapist before I knew IFS. And I had this, I moved every 3 years. Right now, I've lived in 48 or 53 places. I can't remember right now. So um, I was having a relationship concern, and she said, "Well, what was it like to move so much?" And I said, "Well, it was hard, but I learned to just say bye bye." And then when I got to the new place, and I would say, "Hi, how are you? Want to go play racquetball?" Because I there was too much hurt in between, and plus, when I would cry, my mother would say, "Get over it already. Just get over
Oh,
it. This is just what we do, right?" So that was my survival technique. And she says, well, it doesn't work so well to take that into personal relationships. But now I know what that means. I kind of knew what it meant then, but now I know that my exile who got left, who had to leave friends and leave people that she loved over and over and over again, is seeking now to have that not happen, have redemption, basically, to have someone in her life that can say, I'm going to hold you. You can cry as much as you want about this loss. I'm going to help you
mm,
through it. I'm going to be right here. And so that's what we do when we go out into the world.
mm,
But then once we get out into the world of the food, that sometimes there's that desperate quality of our exile. And that's what leads often to the firefighter activity that just is doing anything they can to soothe that. The model that managers are the ones that are preemptive and let's keep the status quo and let's follow this diet so that exile doesn't get upset. But the firefighters are the ones that have to come in when the exile escapes in some way. So that's really kind of how the cycle goes, is that we're constantly going back and forth between the polarization of the preemptive and then the proactive, the one that's getting out there and doing something about it. And then
yeah.
and then things can become more extreme. Manager parts start to get really afraid that the job they're doing isn't going to be valued in the system anymore.
Right. So how was food with that? Because I think I sort of missed it. How was food with the relationships? Like what was happening with the food with you with the relationships? Being like bye, hi. Like what? Tell me the relationship with the connection with food there.
Well, I think part of it was a survival skill to get through the pain of the leaving, and the pain actually of thinking I was an extrovert my whole life, but I don't really think I'm completely extroverted. So the pain of these shyer part, because I was very shy. I'm extroverted, but I'm shy. That these shy parts now had to again And this part would tell me, so now that you get here, you can be different. Nobody knows where you came from, so you can be a whole new person. And
Yeah.
that was a process every 3 years. And I think if I have to think about how it comes into food, it's that constant battle again of, I don't want to say restricting, but eating in a certain way that's going to support the look of this, muscular bodybuilding aerobic teacher body, because I've got 40 people watching me every time I teach, to then saying, okay, let's have pizza on Friday night, and then Saturday morning it's like right back here. Like, that was okay for then, and you needed the calories, but now we got to get back to the good stuff.
Mm.
And so it's a constant leaving and meeting. Right? You're leaving one and going to the other, and then you're coming back.
I got it. Okay. Now I got it. Okay. That makes so much sense. Right. And your body was so used to that, right? That was just how your body was so used to that. And you had to be, because then mom, if you had any emotion around it, mom was like, no, 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 no. This is what we do.
That's right.
And we don't cry about it.
That's right. I am just so delighted with IFS and how it relates so well with food and body image. And it's like there's still a chasm inside that wants to pack in more understanding and more knowledge to, even be more helpful.
I know you've had a really interesting life and careers, and you've done so many things. So the last question I like to ask everyone is, if you weren't doing what you're doing right now and you could do whatever you wanted to do, money doesn't matter, what would you do instead?
Well, one thing I would do is, a dream of mine is to live in the same place as my kid and her family. And so if money's not an issue and they aren't opposed to it, I would build this really nice 2-family kind of outfit for all of us to live in, to see my grandbaby more often. And I would be outside more. When I walk in the mornings, I walk along the Charles River, but sometimes it still feels a little urban. So I'd probably do a little bit more out there. I would finally use my snowshoes that I bought 4 years ago. I have always wanted to kayak, but had parts that were afraid of water and what happens if I fall in. And so anyway, so I'd get over that and I'd do that. I would get a dog. And I have my idea about what kind of dog I would get. And I think what I shared with you earlier is I'd have a block party. I've got great neighbors now, and I think I'd ask the Watertown police to come over and put barriers on either side. And, as soon as COVID's over, I would love to go out and just do that. But I am so in love with what I do right now. I am so satisfied. I am so filled, and in seeing my clients find shifts and balances and integrations in their own life. Just, I don't know, it just makes me fill up. I love every one of them.
It's great.
Yeah.
They're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. This was great.
It was fun.
Yeah, good. So I want to let you know that I live in New Hampshire, and you could come visit me after COVID. I have kayaks and a paddleboard, and we could snowshoe right from my house, like walk on a path. I mean, I could create an experience for you. I'm just saying.
I would love that.
And I have a dog.
I would love that.
I would love it too, honestly. I think it would be really fun.
Yeah, we'll have to put that in the calendar.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFS Tammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time.